Our second session, which is about training the future, and our panel is here. We have Dinah Kane, CEO of Creative Skillset. We have Ralph Tribe from B-Sky-B, in charge of B-Sky-B Academy, and we have Anne Morrison in charge of BBC Academy. So we have a very distinguished panel here. We don't have the Minister, as you know, but we're going to plough on without him. So first of all, I'd like to ask Ralph, you've recently set up this, relatively recently set up the Sky Academy, training a certain number of people, and you've got a number of courses. What made you decide to do this?
Well, actually, I think the Sky Academy is sometimes a little bit misunderstood. So it's only launched recently, but actually the Sky Academy is conceptually a commitment from B-Sky-B to youth and young people. And it's not specific in its in an objective of bringing young people into the world of broadcast. Actually, it's a much more broad-based sort of effort than that, and it's really about just creating, through B-Sky-B, broadcast technology and converged media, just a range of opportunities for young people under the age of 25. It started with an idea that B-Sky-B is 25 years old. Clearly, there are issues around youth employment and opportunity at the moment, and all of this seemed to come together in an idea around perhaps we could focus a number of efforts around individuals under the age of 25, of which one is to do with employment and training. So if we put some of the other sort of pieces of that aside, given the sort of I guess the focus of this particular conference, I think there was some debate in the lead up to the launch of that around where we were going with training and education, particularly around young people coming into the industry. And I think the debate really centres around, and I know it's been covered to a degree this morning, but where are we going with this? Is this around graduates, or is this around something other than graduates? Is this something more to do with apprenticeships, more to do with applied and vocational sort of training and development in the broadcast industry? And I think whilst we remain absolutely committed to graduates, I think it led to a position of saying we need to separate that away from the technical skills that we are looking for in our sort of broadcast sort of segments. And there, I think we have come out pretty clearly in favour of apprenticeships and vocational sort of training and entry. The debate that we have with the universities is kind of along similar lines. Our debate with them is about practical skills. So if the general debate is about employability, and we think apprenticeships offer the quickest route to employability in Sky in the technical areas, that debate continues in the areas that we support graduate recruitment, although there may not be the broadcast technical areas, but in technology, finance, marketing, and some of the functions that just surround broadcast as a business. We do have concerns about how employability skills and practical skills are actually injected into the sort of the degree sort of curriculums.
I mean, isn't it fair to say that when Sky started, you employed a lot of people who'd already been trained by ITV and the BBC, and that was in production, in the technical, and of course the journalism. An awful lot of veteran BBC journalists popped up on Sky.
I think that's true, but I think the debate about youth is not just about the youth unemployment. This is an issue that needs to be addressed, but actually, if you consider content as an industry, whereas it had great times a while ago, and then perhaps it went through a bit of a flat patch. Actually, content as an industry is very much in a resurgent sort of phase. So if you think of the new media players coming into the space, what we're finding is there is more and more demand for broadcast and content-related sort of skills coming from people that we would never thought would be recruiting or trying to compete in this space. If you take BT as an example, they're known as a telco. And yet, as media sort of converges with technology, it's very much, become part of their strategy. But then if you look at the YouTubes and so on, a large part of their commercial strategy is to do with content. And so for us, it's about competing in a market where actually there are not enough. There's not enough skill to go around. You need to, get into a position of growing your own. And I think we've sort of got back to there after, perhaps 10 years of that being less fashionable, perhaps because the demand wasn't there. And, and that's a pretty exciting place to be, I think.
And you're working with the National Film and Television School in Beaconsfield.
Yep.
And
amongst others.
Amongst others, yes.
Yeah.
What other ones? What other organisations are you working with?
Creative skill set. But to be honest, we tend to work more with the academic institutions than we do some of the, the sort of the associations that you've mentioned. We're interested in a direct relationship with them. So we work more with, the universities in terms of lobbying for more practical and vocational content within their degree courses. And then the further education colleges around the apprenticeships and other vocational qualifications.
And I want to come to Dinah Kane now, of skill set, thanks. You've had praise and some criticism this morning. So how are you feeling?
I'm feeling fine, thank you very much. I'm feeling absolutely fine. That's a pretty normal day for me and for us. But it's great to be here and great to see so many people here. And been a really lively debate so far, so looking forward to more.
And what are the new things that you are working on with TV production and with manufacturers then? I mean, the BBC mentioned some things, so... Yes,
OK. Well, a lot. So perhaps if I just touch on a couple of things, and I'm sure we'll come back to the accreditation discussion. I mean, one of the big things we're involved with at the moment is really supporting the growth that's been instigated by the recent tax breaks and the growth of tax breaks within our industries, which include film, which was discussed before, high-end TV, animation, VFX, and we're hoping games shortly. And specifically because this is a TV event, I'll focus on our activity there, which is just in this last period since the tax breaks have been brought in. We have started to now collect new levies in high-end TV and animation to join the film levy. We are working with employers right across the industries to really identify what the key gaps and shortages are. And we've started to co-invest with those employers in a variety of initiatives, one of which I think is interesting in relation to this morning's discussion, which is the establishment of a trainee finder service, where graduates who come from ticked courses, i.e. accredited courses, and others who come with recommendations from the industry actually can and are getting placed on productions in all sorts of grades, including camera, sound and lighting.
I mean, would you agree with those who've made some criticisms of some of the degree courses as not covering enough technical stuff and so on? Would you agree that you have accredited some courses? You've been criticised this morning for accrediting some courses that employers don't find satisfactory.
Well, I think what's very interesting about this morning's discussion, and the thing that I've taken away from it so far, is we have progressed because, if we were here even 5-10 years ago, then there wouldn't really be any countenancing of the bridge and the importance of the partnership between higher education and industry. So I think we've moved a long way from that very ridiculous media studies is the sociology of the whatever, to a far more sophisticated and nuanced debate. However, having said that, I think that there were some very thoughtful contributions from employers this morning who do recruit from higher education. I think if you actually look at the movement in accreditation, we've moved away now from recognising institutes as a whole and have focused last year working very hard with those institutions to apply individual course accreditation, which is very important for for students who are paying their fees, but also important for employers. So basically, out of the 4,000 courses that are relevant to the creative industries, we have accredited 166. I'm going to look at my piece of paper now, and I think 68 of those relate to the areas in film and TV. Now, of those, the specificity is far greater than some of the comments that we've heard this morning. And I think communication is key here. I think people really understanding what courses are accredited, how very specific those courses are. And I think, as the last speaker said, then working together and harnessing all that invaluable expertise and knowledge and wisdom that the various members of the institutes who are here
But of course,
we need to
employability
bring that
is a
together.
key thing, and we do know
We need
that
to
a
bring
lot
that
of
together.
media graduates, there was a survey that showed that the first job for 20 to 25% of media graduates was in retail, which obviously means ASDA, you know. So, I mean, this means they've spent a lot of money and they haven't got a job in the media. Now, there may be lots, and it's very variable, maybe lots of factors, but clearly some courses aren't delivering for employers.
But I'm saying...
Or are there just too many students?
Well, I think this is the problem, because I think you look at those global statistics and you can point to that, but as I've just explained to you, there are a much smaller number of actually very good, focused courses. However, the other thing I think is important to say, it is not the job of those institutions to deliver people, I hate the phrase, but I'm going to use it because it's a clear one, oven ready to the industry. Other industries don't expect people to come out of higher education and immediately walk into a job and understand every nuance. So the partnership between industry helping those courses, supporting those courses, who have worked extremely hard, have industry tutors who basically are taking people who are bright. They are supporting them in terms of understanding the industry and focusing their skills. They can always do with more support. And we do have to get the relationships and the knowledge and the understanding and the recognition between employers and those courses to this next level. But it's really important that people understand that when they come into the industry, as somebody said, the industry and employers and individuals within the industries have a role and a job to then take them on to the next stage.
But of course, part of what was raised, has been raised up till now, is not just having specific skills, it's not having basic core skills in maths and science.
Yes, except there were no courses. I mean, it's very hard because one student from one course and one example doesn't a whole dismissal of a sector and a whole dismissal of a set of higher education contributions make. We heard from ITV this morning about Ravensbourne and other courses. I think the maths and science thing is very important. I think if you go right back to even primary school and schools, one of the things that we've worked very hard on recently, we're very pleased about, is that we've got computer science now into the science curriculum. Michael Gove did change his mind. And that is critical. But the math science piece is something that runs right across the economy.
Yes. And
to go back to what colleagues were just saying, I do think that absolutely the focus on trying to ensure and support and bring together not just science and technology, but the arts, creativity, and also entrepreneurialism. This session's about the future, isn't it? That fusion of skills is going to be really, really important for the future.
Right, and there's one very important point on the, picked up my City AM this morning, and on the front of City AM is a report with the CBI echoing this sort of thing. Secondary school education should move away from A-levels towards a baccalaureate-type system geared towards the economic needs of the country. Overhaul suggested by a panel including CBI President Sir Mike Rake and National Grid boss Steve Holliday says that there should be a broader range of study instead of A-level, including mandatory maths and English for all 16 to 18-year-olds. And the key thing is the quote here, which is very much similar to some of what we're talking about. Sir Mike Rake, head of the CBI, says, "It's very clear that our education system has failed to provide, in an increasingly competitive global world, the skills and competencies necessary for business and for the UK economy to succeed." So this is clearly a concern not just in our industry, but throughout industry. Anne Morrison, at the BBC, you do a lot of training. You have a big budget, about £25 million a year, I gather. You do train some freelancers.
Absolutely. I mean, we are in a way still very much the industry trainer. You know, we have a considerable budget, albeit with BBC Resources, you know, and a flat licence fee and more commitments from it. Our budgets are shrinking, not growing. But at the same time, we delivered something like 50,000 days of training last year. We have websites which 750,000 people use outside the BBC because they're all open access within the UK. We train right across the range in journalism skills, all kinds of production skills, be that directing or craft skills. We also train in technology, broadcast technology, software engineering, and so on. So we're, in a sense, still trying to cover as much as possible of the gamut of training, but the skills which are required are kind of ever expanding, and with changing technology, that the stress on training, I think, which is part of what we're talking about today, is really intense. So I think that the academy, which I founded in 2009, its philosophy is very much about, first and foremost, we have to train BBC staff, but secondarily, we need to share that training resource with an industry which really needs it, because we're dependent on a mobile workforce who might work for us one day and Sky or ITV the next. And so it's in our interests that those people are trained. So within the constraints which we have, we try to share as much as possible, and we have both a commercial business, but also we share as much as we can for free.
Now, the BBC has and other media organisations have faced some criticism over the use of interns and work experience and unpaid work experience going on for a long time, especially for would-be journalists. Do you do unpaid work experience for technicians as well?
So none of that applies to the BBC, because we have the model scheme in terms of work experience, in that we have a central recruitment. We have a huge number of people wanting to get work experience. I don't regard work experience as a bad thing, because it very often lets people know whether they want to work in this industry.
No, the point was that it goes on too long.
No, so not in our case. So we have an absolute limit that it's a month. After that, if people want to extend, it has to be paid. So we have about 1,500 people a year come and work in all different parts of the UK on work experience for up to a month. Sometimes it's a couple of weeks. We have probably 50, 60,000 applicants for those 1,500 places, hugely in demand. And we are encouraging, working with Creative Skillset, in fact, about how can the industry make sure it cleans up its act in this respect, because it's very tempting when you get talented people who write to your independent production company or your facilities house saying, I'll work for you for free, and they're putting no end limit on that. So that's a tempting thing to do. It's actually illegal, so I think we just have to be aware of that. And
but we all know there are lots of production companies, TV production companies, getting people to work for nothing for quite long periods.
So you hear these stories, and what sometimes happens is people will move from one company to another, doing short periods of work experience for each one, and that the totality of that is that they're doing a year's unpaid work experience, and they're paid by the bank of mum and dad to do that. And we need to make sure that we're getting the most talented people into our industries, not the people who already have connections and who are funded by their parents.
So what would you like? Would you like the government to be doing anything differently to
Well,
bring together the three elements of the manufacturers, the producers, and the
On the issue of work experience?
Yes.
Well, I think
no, on the issue generally of training.
Okay. Well, just finishing on work experience, I mean, I think that the issue is not in work experience the clarity of the law. The issue is actually making sure that people are applying it properly. And the Creative Skillset have actually brought out, a clarification of the guidelines of what constitutes work experience, what's an internship, what's an apprenticeship, and so on, because people do get confused about these things. In terms of what I would like to do, I mean, I think that we already have, in many instances, as Claire Paul mentioned earlier from the Academy, about the industry coming together to crack problems. I think that's more and more the answer. And I think that all elements now need to convene, because, as I say, the most intractable problems are the kinds of, say, TV craft skills and so on, which we're talking about today. And these are issues which affect not just one employer, but right across the industry. And in many ways, when those people are freelance, they're not owned by anybody. Therefore, nobody, has a stake in their long-term development and future. So that's a much more difficult thing to crack than when we had those in-house departments in the BBC, which had the training with them. And in a way, when those in-house departments of the BBC went, then the training has not been picked up sufficiently, I would say, really across the industry. So, it'd be great if we could just come in and say, don't worry, stand back, we'll solve it all. Unfortunately, we're not in that situation. So now we're having to kind of often through the auspices of Creative Skill Set, get the industry together. I chair the TV and content strategy group for them. And we've got, all the broadcasters round the table. We've got lots of independent companies. We've got Pact, Bectu and so on. And, we discuss these kinds of things.
Do you find the 3-year BA ONS route the right one, or do you think that the 2-year course,
Not
more
always.
technical course, might be more useful for some people?
I mean, I think, we can go round and round in terms of, us beating up higher education and them saying we're not sort of involved enough. I think, truthfully, I think it's very patchy. I think that there are some terrific courses, and I kind of worry when we're sort of everybody is tarred with the same brush. I don't think it's fair, actually, on a lot of higher education, which is doing a brilliant job. And we get, also the young people are fantastic. We are lucky to have such brilliant creative people coming out of higher education. We shouldn't beat them up. It gets into quite a negative debate that way. But it is very patchy, and sometimes I feel bad for people who've spent $9,000 a year, for 3 years on a degree which really isn't worth very much.
Well,
and so I'm very into let's sort the sheep from the goats here, and not talk about it as if it's all one thing, which is why I think the TIC is actually a very valuable way of sorting out, as long as employers are sufficiently engaged in it. And I would say, if we're slagging off higher education, then the onus is on us as employers to get involved and, go into universities and be part of the accreditation system so that we know which are the great ones. And which are the ones that are more liable to lead to employment. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you can go to university and you can do a totally non-vocational course. You can study philosophy, you can study the history of film. That's all marvellous. Not everything has to be vocational. But if you're going to university because you think it's going to take you into the industry, then it ought to do what it's promising to you. And I think that's the most important thing.
Ralph, what do you think about that?
Well, I do have quite an opinion on this, actually. So, I think the government's getting it half right and half wrong, right? So, I think that the emphasis on apprenticeships and modern apprenticeships, I think, has really come to the fore with this government. Now, I'm not sure that's politically motivated. I think it's more motivated by the fact there's an issue with youth unemployment. So I wonder whether it would be any government sort of driving towards that as one solution, in that area. We think that's a good thing. Because, as we've said, great advocates of vocational training, great believers in, the idea that, you couldn't pursue a target of 100% of people leaving school and getting a degree. It's a kind of pointless endeavour. We think it's bureaucratic, the process of employing apprentices, and we think that whilst for a big organisation like Sky or the BBC or the ITVs of the world, that's not really a great big deal because we can afford to sort of absorb the bureaucracy. I think for smaller organisations in the broadcast sector, that has to be a problem where it's just too much effort. And actually it should be made much more effortless to employ apprenticeships. But on balance, we think they've got that right. With universities, I think our view is that the government could be doing a lot more to prioritise employability as a measure of what a successful outcome is for a degree course. And I think there's a lot of confusion around that. So I sit on the board of Kingston University, which I love. I'm an student there. I live in Kingston. I think it contributes a lot to my sort of local economy. I'm an absolute advocate of that particular institution. But when you talk to them about the issue of employability, it's a small measure amongst some rather bigger measures, which to me seem rather less important from the standpoint of those for whom universities exist, i.e. the students. So I'm not sure that the number of kind of research grants or pieces of research work that a university wins is a greater measure of their success than the employability of the students that go there and their outcomes after university.
Clearly,
and yet
yes.
that is the emphasis of how universities are kind of funded, measured, and so on.
Well, clearly for students, I mean, I've been a governor of an FE college and also of a couple of comprehensive schools, and I know that the issue of, kids are just, can I get a job? That's what they want. And I was in Leeds recently, and there was an advert for the other university in Leeds, not Leeds University, but the one...
Leeds Metropolitan.
Leeds Metropolitan, sorry. Yes. And it said, job guaranteed, after your degree. So, you get a guarantee of a job. And lots more institutions of higher and further education are saying, come to us and you will get a job, because that's obviously what students are worried about. So this issue of employability is really key to everything, isn't it?
It is, but unfortunately I don't think the universities are off the hook, right? So much as I work, if Kingston University is a reasonable example, which I'm sure it is, I don't think it's that unusual one way or the other, they have many arguments about, if you like, the way that they are measured, funded and so on, does not necessarily prioritise employment to the degree that we as employers might want it to. Fair point. But when we've then engaged with them on, okay, well, yeah, but there are subtle and less subtle things you can actually do in the way that the curriculum is structured, the way that work is actually managed within those degree courses, which would definitely lead to your students coming to us and being interviewed by us and being able to provide much more kind of evidence and examples that would make them employable to us. There does seem to be a degree of inertia around just wanting to sort of change the way that the courses have always existed and typically always been taught from the academic sort of faculties. I think...
So how much are courses, perhaps I should ask Dinah here, how much are courses driven by what universities want to do or by what other elements, as in manufacturers or TV producers, want to do?
Well, I think when we throw it open to the floor,
which
it'll
we will
be
in a
really
moment.
interesting to hear answers about that from different people, from different institutions, because I think the answers will always be different. Universities are their own businesses now. I think we're at a very interesting time. Obviously, clearly, the changing in the way in which funding and loans and student fees is driving work and focus, I think is profound, and we're in a period of transition. So to your point, I think absolutely, previously it was research that and probably, again, be interested to hear from colleagues, still leads a lot of what drives investment. But now, obviously, fees, really important, student experience, really important. HEFGE, I'm just talking about England here, HEFGE last year introduced key information sets, which means that each university has to show information in exactly the same way. Part of those information sets are about employability. Partly in answer to the Gloucester criticism about what has Creative Skill Set ever done for us, I think one of the things we've been really pleased about is that the key information sets were originally only going to show accreditations from professional bodies, accountancy, medicine and so on. And after a lot of work, we did secure getting the Creative Skill Set tick into those key information sets, because at the moment I think it's desperately important that individuals get signposted to courses that are related to support and have their roots in working with the industries. That doesn't mean to say that things can't and shouldn't get better. It doesn't mean to say that the discourse and the interaction and the learning and the getting better in terms of curriculum content shouldn't carry on and must carry on.
Should courses be created more quickly then? You've implied you're getting a bit more nimble.
Well, we're not getting nimble. I mean, I think if you imagine our role as a bit of a broker, really. I think all I was going to say in answer to the previous question was that I think as students become more and more of the marketplace, this issue about teaching, about relevance, about flexibility, about employability is going to become ever more important to universities. And I think that within that space, universities will then start to focus in areas that they have real strengths in. And I think that will start to emerge. I think potentially there may be mergers amongst universities emerging going forward. We are talking about the future, aren't we? That's the answer to the previous question. Sorry, you just asked me.
Well, that was about whether courses should be accredited more quickly.
Yeah, I think, the importance is we've now got an open rolling programme around accreditation. I think the point that was made earlier was really critical, which is that within universities, the system of being able to develop courses and get them accredited within the universities, I think is also now hopefully speeding up, not everywhere, but that is also critical to enabling a flexible and fast discourse with the industry about relevance and content.
Okay, well, we'll now throw it open to the audience, and if I can't see you, I do apologise, the lights are a bit bright. Would anyone like to kick things off? Yes, just here. Yeah. And please state who you are and where you're from.
Yes, of course. My name is Dick Hibbard. I happen to be the president of the Guild of Television Cameramen, but don't hold that against me. My interest is in television generally, and not just cameramen, although I obviously accent on that. I'm delighted to see all of the panel here today, particularly delighted to see somebody from Skillset, because I began to believe that this was just a figment of my imagination. It was just a quango which was answerable only to itself. But now we have somebody who can answer questions about Skillset.
So, we got a question.
Who assesses the universities to see whether they're eligible for think of the word accreditation? Is it anybody to do with the industry, or is it just Skillset filling in a form? Pardon my cynicism. My relationship with Skillset is about 40 years ago, when I thought they were a waste of space. I haven't been persuaded otherwise since, I'm afraid.
Did you say 40 years? I'll take that in three parts. We didn't exist 40 years ago. That's the first thing. The second thing is we're not a quango. We are owned by the industry. Our board is made up of CEOs from right across the industries, and as Anne has just described, all of our work in different sectors and in the nation is led by employers from across these industries. And I think your point about accreditation, absolutely. Victor, who is an employer, will be speaking this afternoon. All of the accreditation is led by industry representatives, and it is they who go to look at these courses. We're not talking about fashion design here, but our latest TIC courses will be launched at the beginning of February at Somerset House. And the panel that's been leading looking at fashion design courses, probably more of relevance to maybe the women here than the largely male audience, is Betty Jackson, Nicole Fari, and others of that ilk. So I think, to my point, I think it's about communication, because you clearly do misunderstand us, and we have a responsibility to help you understand us better, I think.
Okay, well, let's take another question.
Could I just...
Oh, sorry, yes, of course.
I mean,
sorry.
we're not stooges. So, but just in defence of Creative Skillset, so, and to some of the points I've made before, I actually think, in terms of getting employers involved in the accreditation or the assessment of these courses, there are very little avenues to doing that. There is, a university can sort of opt to do that or opt out of doing that if it wants to do it under its own back. Actually, I have to say I'm very impressed with the work that Creative Skillset are doing, trying to us for the first time actually create a more sort of systematic route to having employers give an opinion on the courses in terms of, do they actually produce people with the skills to do the job well when they get there, or don't they? And to be perfectly honest, it's the only place where that kind of idea is coming from. So whilst all universities now are obliged to give stats on how employed their students are when they leave there, I mean, that can be down to a million different factors. The idea of students who have studied for the media and lots of them being unemployed, that's sort of raised in that article. I mean, that doesn't mean that those courses are or aren't necessarily giving the right skills. It might easily mean that there are just lots of people doing those courses and just not millions of jobs in that industry. In the same way as, presumably you could get great employability skills for a really unpopular course, supplying skill into an industry where there's an enormous amount of sort of demand, but just not enough people to fill the jobs in it.
But then
it doesn't mean
the
much.
CBI might say that is a waste of young people's lives and talents, that they've done a course that hasn't got them something hasn't got them a job at the level that they could do. It's
Well,
something below their level.
in the first instance, I mean, I think you'd have to ask the student themselves, you know, 5 years after that kind of situation as to whether they thought that was a good investment or not. And that's the thing, you know, their voice isn't heard in this. It's all very well us commenting, the CBI commenting and so on, and what is best for students. But at the end of the day, they're the best judge of that.
I think there also might be a bit of a misapprehension in the room about media courses and the accreditation, because actually I think it's about 2% of the courses are actually accredited by Creative Skills Set. I mean, it's really not very many, and the ones that are on the list I think are really bloody good courses. So, you know, many kind of aspire to get on the list and don't. So it's the ones that are there, if you have a critique of those, I'd be really interested. And that's not to say that we think, you know, media courses in general are all marvellous, because as I think of saying earlier, I think it's incredibly mixed bag and many of them are not very good. But I don't think that means that the accreditation system is discredited. I actually think these courses that are on the list are brilliant.
Okay,
Can I just say one thing though, because you've been quoting the CBI. The CBI produced its strategy, launched it 2 weeks ago for the creative industries. It's a really important moment for our industries, I feel, because it's about actually starting to get centre stage the stats you talked about earlier, which you've been involved with, centre stage in terms of recognition of the contribution of these industries. The CBI's strategy actually commends, recommends, and says that the industry needs to get right behind the creative skill set tick, and also uses it as a model for other sectors. So, you know, things need to get better within it, but in terms of the concept and in terms of what it's driving to do, the CBI couldn't be more supportive.
Okay, can I come to that lady there, down there?
Hello, Carol Doe from the University of York. I'd just like to say we've been through the skill set accreditation process, and I would like to invite anybody up to York who thinks that that process isn't robust. We're a very new course in terms of our student output, and we've done extremely well. I think we've got to be careful that the discussion doesn't surround education versus practical skills. It's very difficult for a university when they're delivering academic courses. They can deliver lectures to hundreds of students at a time, but when you're delivering practical skills, multi-camera studio, for example, we can only take 15 students at a time. So we have a very high staff to student ratio, and the universities find that quite difficult to deliver in these difficult times. But we work with that, and our students have done extremely well, and I do think it is the case that it is patchy. People are working very hard, and I personally have seen a massive increase in the help and support that we've had from Skillset, especially over the last 3 years. And I think that the landscape's changing as a whole, and I think we should embrace this and work with it. Sorry I haven't got a question, but I do want to say that students are going into areas like marketing, media buying, film distribution. It's vast and varied, and I think that's a good thing.
Okay, next one. Lady here, it is a lady, is it? After my previous...
Hi, my name's Susan Scotcher, and I'm Course Director for Television and Video Technology. And I'm absolutely delighted to hear that, Ralph, you're involved in Kingston University, because you should be very proud that there's so many Kingston University students here that have helped set up today. So they've been behind the scenes setting up. I'm one of the founder members for the ITTP, and I'm Course Director at Kingston University. Now, when I joined in 2006, I approached Skillset because I wanted to develop my course to be an industry-facing course. Unfortunately, I found the door was closed at that time. They'd accredited a certain number of universities, and they said they weren't looking for any more to join. I have been knocking on the door since then, and this year is the first time the door has actually become open. So we will go through your accreditation process, but until this point, I couldn't be one of your wonderful accredited courses because I wasn't permitted to actually apply.
So why does that happen?
It's a technology degree, and there wasn't a technology accreditation. There was one for screenwriting, there's one for other
Yes, that's
areas,
right.
but not for these technical skills that you're seeing around you.
Yes. As I've explained, we are employer-owned and led. So, for example, in script writing many years ago, there was a view in the film industry that needed attending to, or in games. But it's absolutely about what the employers are saying they want to focus on and where they want to lead. So you're right. When we started, it was the employers in games, it was the employers in animation, employers in film. The process has then spread as the employers have said they want it to spread. But in terms of your course being accredited, we weren't really open for course accreditation in the subjects that you're talking about until, as you rightly say, very recently. And that's about the industry. That's about the employers and about priorities. It's not about us sitting there as a quango in the middle, suddenly deciding, oh, let's do technology, because absolutely we need the people who are going to do the assessment, and we need the support of the employers who are then saying that they will work, recruit and support.
Ros, could I come back? Just that over 80% of the people involved in the media industry, from the statistics that Ros was talking about earlier, are the people that are behind the scenes, actually doing the technical skills.
Yes.
And so that's 80% of those technical skills that you weren't accrediting for the last few years.
No, I don't think that's fair. I think games is very technical. I think animation is technical. I think that film production is also technical. I think what you're saying is that the very specific course that you deal with, so basically, you're trying to imply that we don't have or haven't got or accredited courses that are to do with technology across the media in its widest form. That's not the case. That's not the case. So maybe we should speak later, or one of my colleagues.
Well, we are going to have a session on accreditation and its value, so
yes.
Perhaps we could move more to general craft training.
Yes,
could I have someone who didn't speak already? That gentleman there, yeah.
Good morning, I'm Frank Considine from FC Media, which is a meaningless tiny little company, but I work for the BBC for donkey's years. As you can see by this Nordic blonde hair, I've been around for a long time. Now, the conversation this morning takes sort of three routes. One is, should we have training more along an HND, or should we do a degree course? If it's a degree course, should it be more focused on the individual skills you need to move straight into the industry, using that phrase, as you mentioned, up and ready? Well, I think for me, we all know that everybody will tell you, the experts will say now, that you are unlikely to leave university and work for one employer for the rest of your working life. What you need are transportable skills. I would suggest you're better to have a degree in things like history and languages, which are generally very useful in broadcast, and you're working around the world, you're working with foreigners. To have a qualification like that, or English, which enables you later in life to move away from being a cameraman, a lighting man, a VT editor, or whatever chosen skill you have. And one of the problems that many of my generation had was that people became a cameraman, and with one or two very few exceptions, they sat there till the day they retired. And what you need is to have a throughput of people to create a better working environment for youngsters to join, for people to move on when they want to move into management. And the doors were closed for many of our generation who joined without a degree. So that's a plea rather than a question. But thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really good point and a very interesting perspective. And given that this is a session about the future, I think we need to be able to address how do we have, a multi-skilled future where people are going to have probably a succession of different careers. They're maybe not going to do the one thing all their lives. And how do we make sure that we've got the skills and the transferable skills that we need for a really an unknown future in many ways. People sometimes say, well, how can you train people, they're joining the industry when you don't know what the industry is going to be doing in sort of 10 years' time, or how the audience are going to be, consuming media. But I think actually we do know quite a bit about the kinds of things that we need. We need people who've got critical analytical skills. We need people who aren't afraid of technology, whatever that technology may be. And we know that the individual cameras or the desktop editing system, whatever it may be, is going to change. So, you know, you can train them on a particular system, but it's more important that they have a confidence and the right approach so that they can be flexible, whatever system is thrown at them in the future. So I do think it's interesting. I mean, we do attract a lot of humanities graduates, I would say, and there's, you know, reasons that you sort of suggest for that. I'm always keen also to attract more science, STEM subjects in as well, because sometimes even for our science programs, we kind of struggle to get people who've got the scientific understanding. And I think it was kind of quoted before about understanding output of a plug and so on. That doesn't totally surprise me because we have a lot of arts graduates. So what we're about is actually trying to fuse, you know, the science understanding, the technology understanding with the creative and humanities grasp as well, because I think there's a fusion of those skills that's going to be needed for the future. So we have a big fusion training program. And also I think in terms of attracting in those people, I mean, we're expanding our new entry schemes, which rather goes against the trend and some of the sort of pessimism that I've heard, in that, you know, that goes really across a very broad range of skills. So, you know, we've got well over 100 trainees. Tony Hall has announced we're going to have 1% of the BBC staff are going to be apprentices. So that's going to be 170 apprentices. We're actually going to have about 350 new entry people from, you know, next year onwards, which is huge. We've never had that many. And one of the things that we're doing as well, to address your point about the bureaucracy of apprenticeships, which I understand and agree with, is that small companies just can't really cope very easily with bringing in an apprentice. So we're hiring more people than we need in the BBC, and then we're placing them out with independent companies as and when they've got the work. And that takes the burden of that infrastructure off them, the bureaucracy, you know, how do I sort of gear up to have an apprentice when I don't even have an HR person? And I think that is a helpful thing that large employers can do for their supply chain, for the companies on which they depend for the quality of their programs, and get new talent into them as well as just into the big employers.
Okay, gentleman over there.
My name is Noso Bayuan. I'm the course leader for Film and Media at Gloucestershire College. First and foremost, I want to address something the gentleman in the middle said with regard to employment. To say that one of the primary purposes, some of higher education courses are not entirely or designed specifically for employment. We know that's very important, but that's not the be-all and end-all. Entrepreneurship is really important as well with regards to the number of students that are coming out from the many higher institutions here. Not all Sky, ITV only take a very small number, so they need to be driven also towards entrepreneurship. There's a lot of opportunity in new media, on the internet, online, and they need to be engaged with that. Also, we want young people to be interested in thinking outside the box. So sometimes an organization like the BBC can be restrictive for a young person with regards to what they want to do. But my question is, what are you going to do to expand access for people, one, who don't live around London, because we find that a lot to be a big problem, where a student who lives somewhere in Gloucestershire says, well, I can't live in London, it's too expensive. And secondly, what are we doing to expand access for people who don't come from the same middle-class background, yeah, and don't have the skills, mm-hmm, yeah, automatically that you would expect to see?
Yeah. Well, no, I completely agree. It's music to my ears. I completely agree with that. And, you know, as you can hear from my accent, I didn't grow up in the London area either. But, you know, growing up in Belfast, I had to move to London in order to pursue a senior career. And actually, because the BBC I was part of the move of programmes out of London to Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, of course, Salford. I feel very passionately we've got to represent people right around the UK and have careers, including senior careers for people in all parts of the UK. So the BBC is, you know, famously doing quite a lot on that front. I think it's very important as well that, you know, our apprentices Our trainees are in all parts of the UK. So they're right across, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. They all have their own apprenticeship schemes. We're also, to the sort of diversity point, which I'm particularly passionate about, we're doing things such as linking up with Job Centre Plus, so that we're being able to attract people who would never normally think the BBC was for them, and work in partnership with those organisations, be able to kind of bring in people who, unless we go to them, would almost, exclude themselves from applying through the normal routes. So we're doing a kind of massive outreach programme to persuade people, actually, because it's not always easy that, to say, actually, we are open to you. And in particularly, apprenticeships and traineeships, it's a brilliant way to start your career, because you get, a year plus, which is really about work placements and formal training, and you get to move around so that you've got a broad experience for which to get contracts and jobs after that.
Okay, well, we're coming to the end of this session now, so I'm going to take one more question. There's someone down the back there.
Thank you. My name's Lynn Turner. I'm the Technical Director of Four Corners, which some of you may be aware of. It's a small organisation. It's an educational charity. We've been around for 40 years. And one of the things that we're very proud of, one of the things we have been doing, is training people to be ready to enter the media industries. And it tends to be production-led training, very, very practical hands-on stuff. We also do training in production management and so on and so forth. And for the last 3 years, we've managed to get 40 people a year into paid work placements in the industry. Now, that's a fantastic way to proceed. It's a fantastic way of helping people where mummy and daddy doesn't work for the BBC, who don't have private incomes, into proper jobs. And again, we've got a brilliant record of being able to do that. We're not doing that at the moment because there's no funding for it. We are, however, delivering a project with Ravensbourne, which is called Digital Film Labs, and that is to help people who are existing freelancers, possibly at the beginnings of their careers, or needing a bit of help, and we're providing networking opportunities, we're doing seminars, we're working very closely with the private sector in helping people keep their skill levels up. It's the sort of hand-holding that a new freelancer tends to need.
Okay, we've got a question.
Sorry?
You've got a question.
What I was attempting to come to, excuse me if I'm being a bit rambling, is that those two projects, I think, are models of a possible way forward. And the other thing that I do is I do a bit of teaching for Southbank Uni on the Film Studies course. So that's entirely academic. My students know exactly what they're going to do with their degrees, which tends to be entering PR, marketing, teaching, so on and so forth. Despite my best efforts, one or two of them escape and enter the film and TV industries every year. But my question really is around whether the panel have thought more about working with organisations who are outside of formal education and actually working hand in hand with the industry, such as Four Corners. We're very, very few on the ground, but we are there, and there's an organisation called MITA, which people here might have heard of, the Moving Image Training Alliance, which coordinates those organisations. Thank you.
Anyone?
Well, I mean, I guess the answer is yes. We have thought about the opportunities presented by working, with organisations like yours, and we do. It's a no-brainer, in essence, in that it provides a shortcut to the kind of people that we want to talk to, and then, an obvious meeting of minds around, people coming in perhaps from underprivileged backgrounds and who can't afford to fund their own sort of way in. And us connecting with those individuals. I mean, that's a strategy that I'm sure all of our sort of organisations pursue. To the point, though, that was made just before, because I think it was kind of addressed to me. I'll try and do it briefly. I get your point about higher education isn't just about employability. But my sense of it is that that isn't emphasised enough. Working with higher education organisations, you can find that used as an excuse for why they don't really focus on employability very much at all, because they overdo then the position around, but we're here for so many other reasons. Of course higher educations are, but if you were to ask the students who in essence are the only reason that they exist, what their priorities were from that, My belief is that they would put employability right at the top of the list, and I think it doesn't quite get the emphasis typically that it could do.
Okay, I'm going to say thank you to our panel now. I think they've been extremely interesting. I'm sure you'll have lots more to say to them during lunch if they're still here, so I think we should thank our panel. And now I'm handing back to Graham Reed, who's going to take over from me and introduce Paul Cordner from Avid.
Oh, thank you very much, Margaret. Great, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. It's been brilliant. Thank you very much. I hope you come again next year. Well, I've just invited them all back for next year, so I hope they all feel not too hard done by that. It will, in fact, all return it. So please, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that very interesting debate. We're now going to move on to our very important people from Avid, who are now going to give us a presentation about what Avid is involved with in their education. I must encourage you also to tweet. Apparently we have a very hot lot of tweeting going on, so please, everybody, tweet away. And now over to Tom from Avid, wherever Tom from Avid actually is. Where is Avid man? Oh, here we go. And round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can all hear me. Yep. Great. So I'd like to really take this opportunity to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to come and maybe share with you our thoughts on Avid and its role in the media industry, and in particular how we like to feel that we play a little part in helping the educational establishment drive and grow the next generation of media professionals. I think most of you probably know who Avid are, but essentially we are a media technology company. We are 26 years old. We employ about 1,600 professionals around the world, and we have a turnover or revenue of around about $500 million. My role within Avid is I'm the Vice President of our international business, and in American company parlance, what that means is everything outside of the US. And that actually represents quite a sizable chunk of our business. It's about 2/3 of all of our income, all of our businesses done outside of the domestic US market, from markets in Asia all the way through to Europe, Africa, Russia, the Middle East, India, Latin America, etc. In terms of our customers, they range from a great spectrum of media professionals, from independent creatives through to educational establishments, universities, colleges, etc., training institutes. We do a bit of work with the government. We work with, obviously, the big film studios, post-production houses, and, of course, the big TV broadcasters. So what I really wanted to do for a few minutes today is share with you how we think a little bit about the media industry, how it's changing, and, of course, the role that education has within that. So as we look at the market, there's probably three major things that we see happening. The first one is that everything is now being created digitally. So the way that we used to make and edit and distribute content is profoundly changing. Everything is now digital, and this wave is sweeping across our industry. And what that's actually doing is it's bringing together the creative and the business parts of organization together to become one. And when we talk to most of our major customers, they actually tell us that's the number one challenge they have in their industry, is how to operate their business or their training center or their production facility efficiently with the new digital value chain that's in place. The second thing that we see happening is this consumerization of content creation and distribution. Put simply, we're all part of the digital economy now, and consumers, each of us, have a choice. Do we watch that television program through a linear broadcast transmission, or do we watch it on our iPad? Do we pay for it, or do we not pay for it? Do I watch it now, or do I watch it tomorrow, or a month's time? So there's this great choice. The consumers really are in control. And when you couple that with this digitization process, it's a very different market that we're seeing now. The other thing that is going on is while all this change is happening, there's this huge pressure on creating more and more efficiency. And also, a lot of companies have to spend a great deal of money on buying big libraries of content or media assets to drive subscribers or audiences to their content. So if we think of the value chain, what you have on the top left here is the traditional chain that our industry has worked with for 20, 30, 40 years. Essentially very linear in nature, and we're starting to notice that with digitization, it's actually all fusing together. There is no linear value chain anymore. It's simply a series of interconnecting circles that basically drive how the media industry works. And what that means is, because everything is digital, is that you can do a lot more with your kind of content. But media and professionals, creatives, still need a number of things. They want to inspire, they want to tell a story. They want to work efficiently, they want to look after and make money from the assets that they buy or create, and they also want to work with partners who have industry expertise. So I think the industry at this juncture of change is looking really for a bit of leadership, and what we're trying to do with our vision for the future, which we call Avid Everywhere, is very, very simple. It's simply about enabling the connection between two people. One person who makes content for the joy, pleasure, and consumption of somebody else. That is what our industry is, and that is what our company is trying to do. Simply connect those two people together. The way we're going to do that is we've launched this vision, this platform called Avid Everywhere. What essentially this means is that all of our products and solutions that we sell around the world, a lot of them have very common components. And what we've done is we've stripped out all those common components and put them on a central platform, Avid Everywhere. And what that means is then all of the products that we all know, so Media Composer, iNews, Newscutter, Pro Tools, all of those products basically sit as applications on top of this common shared services platform. So the way to think about it is, if you have an iPhone or an Android device or a BlackBerry, you log on to it, and then you basically have all your various applications, email, calendar, a note-taking application, whatever it might be. Yeah? You have all of access to those, and simply you have a platform that allows you to operate that. I don't know if we can go back one slide. I just want to talk a moment about this concept of marketplaces. Can we go back, please? Thank you. So the other way that we see the market changing is we're trying to build an ecosystem, and we want all of our customers, all of our competitors, all of our partners, all industry professionals to become part of this platform. And it's going to be free to join. And essentially, you're going to have these two marketplaces that exist within it, where anybody who's connected to the Avid platform can post a content asset, audio or video. Now, if you're a big organization, you might want to be very careful about who sees your assets, who can do something with them, who can edit, mix, or access them. So you'll have a private marketplace where you define where you put your content assets for people within your organization to work with. They could be business people, promo creators, editors, journalists, etc. But on the other hand, we also see there's a huge market for independent creatives who make some great content, some inspiring stories, some wonderful music, and they simply want to make it available to the marketplace for people to use it, pay for it or not. And so we have this concept of a public marketplace where you can post your content, and then if you're a major broadcaster like the BBC and you're looking to do some promos and you want a particular piece of music or a particular piece of content, you can search on the marketplace to find that, knowing that you can then use the content that is posted there, because the digital rights management and everything else will already have been worked out. So this is a fundamental change to how we see the dynamics of the industry operating. So if you can move on, please. So in terms of education, it's a really important part of our business. It's a growing vertical. It's very much a growing market for Avid. We're investing very heavily in it, and it really covers all ranges and aspects of the technology that we provide, be it the audio products, which are loved and well known, such as Pro Tools and some of our iconic consoles, through to the video software products, such as Media Composer or Newscutter or Symphony, and then, of course, the storage, hardware, and news platforms that underpin all of that. The point is that our industry and our role within it is very much dependent upon the next generation of professionals coming through. And for that reason, education is so, so important to AVID. Now, I had the pleasure at a reception of meeting Mick Audsley. He may be known to some of you in the room. He's an independent film editor. He's one of these wonderful people who you talk to, and I'm always from a business background. You talk to him and you just want to keep listening to him because he's so enthusiastic, he's so passionate, he absolutely loves what he does. And he's actually, he was telling me how long he'd used AVID for, etc. And he's actually away filming this new motion picture called Everest. It'll be out, I think, later this year with Jake Gyllenhaal. They're filming it on Italy. And he actually said to me, the most important thing you can think about, Tom, if you think about AVID in education, is if people have AVID on their CV, it's a passport to them to have a better opportunity to work in the industry they love. And I thought that was pretty cool. I really did. And then he told me all about the film he was shooting, and I thought, wow, you really are quite cool. Okay, if we move on. Some of you may know about this. We have an accredited program called the AVID Learning Partner Program. This mission is essentially to promote the knowledge and the learning and the development of our technologies across the industry. This is targeted at institutions for learning, education, universities, training partners, and indeed major broadcast corporations as well. We have 78 registered ALPs in the UK and 612 companies or organisations worldwide that are part of this programme, and we support and sponsor it with training and various other things as well. You can learn more about it there too. Okay, so we have a sort of theme within AVID, and we ask all of our employees who sort of sit at the front end of the commercial part of our business to choose to be a star, because that's what we want to help the industry create, and it's what we want to become as well as a company. And as I said at the start, education is an absolutely critical part of that. We have a number of wonderful organisations that have invested in and work with us. I'd like to introduce one of those right now. I'd like to introduce Peter Williams from Middlesex University.
Thank you, Tom. Middlesex boasts an AVID learning partner and their skill set, Pick the Tick accredited university. Here at Middlesex, we've invested £80 million in our new art, design and media building, including TV studios, production gallery and sound gallery designed by Sony, and a newsroom. We have 8 news cutter systems for journalism, which join iNews with the journalists to write their scripts. We have 30 media composer suites with video editing and 25 Pro Tools systems, including 2 post-production recording studios and a music studio, using Pro Tools HD, HDIO, Sync HD, HDX, and C24 on this. And this gives us amazing power over our previous HD systems. Behind all of this, we have AVID's ISIS 5000 with 64 terabytes worth of storage, 2 airspeed multi-streams for record and play out, Interplay for data management, and Sibelius for composition. We're continuously looking to keep our systems up to date in order to give our students the best possible learning environment. These facilities are primarily used by undergraduate and postgraduate programs in television production, film, journalism, animation and music, with productions including entertainment, drama, documentary and news. Recently, our students filmed an event with Reverend Jesse Jackson, the civil rights activist who walked with Martin Luther King. They also host a regular series of events with Kurt Barling called Broadcasting Today, which debate the media industry. The television production program has been developed in consultation with practitioners from the industry sector with the intention of providing students with an education that equips them with the appropriate knowledge and skills required. We cover both single and multi-camera shooting and give a range of workshops from lighting, framing and sound to editing. Our animation program is headed up by BAFTA award-winning animation director Jonathan Hodgson. And we also sort of work with the industry in there, making sure that we have industry placement for our students to be able to go straight into that. At Middlesex, we strongly encourage cross-collaboration between programs, may call on other programs that we have, such as fine art, fashion, jewellery, dance, etc., to help to be part of this production and make sure that students actually make something that's nice and a creative project there. So why did we choose AVID? Well, we chose AVID as we wanted to replicate the top end of the industry and make sure that our students were able to gain the experience needed for them to succeed when they graduate. AVID has a strong integration between their hardware and software, allowing us to know that we can rely on the system working time and time again. This is ideal for us as we wanted to make sure that we could build a facility that could be expanded into the future. The flexibility of the system allows us to work on projects in any of our facilities and bring up the same projects from each of them. We also wanted to be able to enhance our programs by offering certification on AVID software, and so the AVID Learning Partnership is great for us. AVID Solutions have helped us deliver training in our dedicated learning facilities. We can pull up a project and teach aspects of the software while students are able to follow what we're doing on the same project. Our training rooms are open access and enable students to work on their projects with specialist technical support available when required. We are able to offer additional certified training to our students and thus give them the edge when entering the industry. The workflow between Media Composer and Pro Tools has reduced the turnaround time for us and therefore given more time to our students to be creative. Sharing all of the media here between our suites with our ISIS 5000 on a private network is great, and students and staff can log into any system and continue working from where they left off. As I said before, we have 64 terabytes worth of space, which is currently plenty for the projects we're currently working on, but we'll likely look to expand this in the future as we anticipate an increase in both the number of students and the size of the productions that they're working on. Interplay is key to this, as it's used to manage the media on ISIS and enables us to search quickly and efficiently. This helps us to teach students about media management, which will be crucial to them when they enter the industry. When we became an AVID Learning Partner, one of the main incentives was being able to offer our students additional certification, which has been received well by our students. We're able to teach currently at Pro Tools and Media Composer up to the 100 level of the curriculum. And the curriculum itself is developed in partnership between AVID and its learning partners and gives basically a good grounding in the use of the software and complements the teaching that we do on our programs. By being in the partnership with AVID, both our university facilities and certified instructors stay up to date with the latest versions of the software, therefore making sure that we're able to continue to deliver the latest changes to our students. I feel that being in the AVID community gives us a much better line of feedback to AVID, but also to the community as a whole, to other education and training facilities, both independent and university, across the world. If we need to find out information, then we have a much larger resource now to be able to draw on, which in turn helps us to help our students in delivering the appropriate training. So where's next for us? We strive to be both innovative and lead the industry and conduct more research and development within our facilities. We also intend to expand the AVID curriculum that we're able to offer to our students, including teaching Pro Tools and Media Composer at 200 level and also adding certification for Sibelius. We'll also be increasing the number of teaching facilities in order to give our students the best possible experience and the chance of the industry when they graduate. And I think I may have forgotten to move my slides along, so let me just look through in some of the facilities that we have here. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you.
Right now, you lot. Well, thank you, Avid, very much for that very interesting presentation. Being a cameraman, it means nothing to me at all, but I'm sure that those of you who dabble in the black art of post-production and laptop and pushing F7, it all means an awful lot to you. So thank you very much. So it's almost lunchtime, but before you go, I have to throw a bucket at you. Now, our media partners, TV Bay, who publish every month a wonderful magazine. If you don't get it, you should. It's really good, I've been told to say. So it's now lunch. Network, chat, meet, talk, discuss, and we're going to reconvene back here, I believe, in about an hour and a quarter's time. So thank you very much for a very good morning's conference, and we'll see you all again in about an hour and a quarter's time. Enjoy your lunch and networking.